What is pastoral counseling? This is Dr. Shane P. Linder, and we're going to talk about that. Pastoral counselor is a legal term. Most people call them Christian counselors. They need to be an ordained minister, an elder, maybe even a deacon, a priest, a bishop, something like that. Because they do not get their license from the state, like from the Department of Health, but they are getting their authority from a religious organization to do counseling. One seeking counseling from a pastoral counseling needs to look at their education. Now, some may have a counseling certificate from a Bible college, and that might be 1 or 2 years of schooling that they have. Others have a bachelor's degree from a Bible college, and that would be 4 years. Others would have a master's degree, and that's really what you really want to look for. If they have less than a master's degree, then they're in the process of education. But the master's degree is where most of them are headed. They want to get a master's degree in counseling or some type of therapy. Some will go on to get their doctorate degree, but many counselors, once they get their master's degree, that's where they're at. So should you talk to somebody that just has a certificate, a Bible certificate, or someone that just has a bachelor's degree? Sure, they can be helpful, but just understand that they are on the path and they haven't arrived at the end of their path. That typically someone that is a counselor is going to want to earn at least a master's degree before they settle into their career of counseling. Also, one would want to look at their affiliation. Who is ordaining them? Are they ordained by a regular known denomination, like, for example, the Lutheran Church or the Southern Baptist Church or the United Methodist Church? Are they ordained by the Catholic Church, something like that? If they are not, if they may be ordained by a small congregational church, and if they are ordained by a smaller church, then you'd want to look for some certifications or organizations that they belong to, like the American Association of Christian Counseling, which I belong to, or the National Christian Counselors Association, which I also belong to that. So what is a counselor? Well, a counselor normally helps people get through difficult transitions. So perhaps somebody just died, their mother or their child or their wife, and they go to a counselor to help them transition through that grief that they are experiencing. Or maybe it's a marriage that is having difficulties. So they're going through a transition in their marriage. They're going through a difficult time, and they go to a counselor to help them work through that transition. Could be a young couple that they just had their first child, so they've been living together as husband and wife for a while. Now they have a baby, so they have a transition that they are going to transition through, and they go to a counselor to help them through that transition. Now, a coach is a little different. A coach helps somebody achieve their goals. For example, somebody that wants to live healthier. They may have some exercise goals or some diet goals, and they go to a coach to help them achieve those goals. Could be business goals, where they have some business goals and they go to a coach to help them with some business goals. Now, counselors typically do both. They do coaching and they do counselors. But some people, they call themselves a coach, and if they call themselves a coach but they're not a counselor, then that's what they do. They just help people get to goals, help people achieve goals, but they do not do counseling like marriage counseling or grief counseling or something of that effect. Now, what about a chaplain? If you've seen my resume, you see that I am a chaplain. Well, a chaplain is both a counselor, including coaching abilities, and also a minister. So chaplain is a minister and a counselor combined. Who is Dr. Shane? Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Seattle, Washington until I was 16 years old. Then my family moved to Minnesota, where I finished high school, and I went to college at Minnesota State University, Mankato. That is a little gym in the Midwest. They specialize in little different programs that a lot of other colleges don't run. Some innovative programs. And the program I went through was the construction management program, and I got my bachelor's degree in that. Afterwards, I went to work in the construction industry as an estimator and a project manager. I joined the Army National Guard while I was in high school, and I was trained in as a crane operator, so I was part of the engineer regiment. And during the Gulf War, I volunteered for active duty, and they sent me to the jungle of Panama, and there I worked on a bridge crew while doing my tour of duty. I started learning Spanish in Panama, so when the war was over and I came home, I signed up for a Spanish program with the Minnesota State University, and a group of us students, we went down to La Universidad de Guadalajara, and I studied Spanish in Guadalajara as a foreign exchange student. Then, after that, I signed up for missionary work, and I went to El Salvador as a missionary. So I started to learn a little bit more than the basic Spanish. Well, I finished college and I became bilingual and got into the construction industry and was pretty successful as a project manager until around my 40s. And well, I remained successful in the construction industry, but I decided to go to graduate school because I was involved in my church and I was involved in helping drug addicts and alcoholics find recovery, and I decided to get a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And I got that master's degree at La Universidad de Montemorelos. That is a Seventh-day Adventist university in Mexico. It's a pretty famous university down there because it has a hospital, it has a medical school, and it also has the denomination's seminary in Mexico. After I finished my master's degree at Montemorelos, I enrolled with Colorado Theological Seminary, and I studied clinical pastoral counseling. I had a supervising counselor that I would work under to do all my studies, so I did a lot of face-to-face counseling with clients as part of the doctorate program under the supervision of Dr. Maria Priestley from San Antonio. And here's a picture of me with her upon my graduation. Well, now that you know who I am and where I came from, let's talk a little bit about the counseling that I do. I start out by having the client take a test or answer a questionnaire, 18 questions, and that will tell me what their temperament is. Temperament is that inborn part of us. It is a certain set of inclinations that we have so that we relate to people. It measures how we relate and interact with other people. And what happens is we're born with this temperament, and then as we grow older, as we develop, we learn behavior, and that's what we call our character. So we get all these learned behaviors from our family and from our church and from our school and the media that we watch and music we listen to, and just everything influences us, and we learn all this different behavior, and that is our character. And when we combine our character and our temperament together, we get our personality. Well, when somebody is dealing with certain issues in life, if they're transitioning through something, oftentimes they find they need to modify some of their learned behavior. And knowing what their temperament is helps in modifying that behavior. We cannot change our temperament. That's what we're born with. We have those inclinations. But we can change our character. And when we change our character, what we're doing is we're tweaking our personality. So we can't change our personality 100% because our temperament is a big part of our personality. But we can tweak our personality. And if we're dealing with a transition, say we're having some marriage problems, or say that we're part of a newly married couple, or we just become parents and we've never had children together. Maybe we've been married for 1 or 2 years and now we have this child, and we may have to change some of those learned behaviors as we transition to being a parent. So that is the type of counseling that I do. Is we look at the temperament, and then we look at what type of behavior modification can we do. How can we change our character a little bit so that we tweak our personality and can better adjust to the situation that we are dealing with. So what areas do I specialize in? Well, substance abuse is a big area that I work with a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics to help them find recovery from drug addiction and alcoholism. That is a big area of my expertise, and I've been doing that long before I went to graduate school to get my master's degree. I've been working with drug addicts and alcoholics as far back as high school. So for most of my life, I've been working with drug addicts and alcoholics to help them find recovery. Divorce, trauma, and co-parenting. Now, this is an area of specialty of mine. This is an area that I started working in when I got into graduate school. So I've been doing it for a few years, but certainly not as long as I've been working with alcoholics and drug addicts. And sexual therapy. Now, sexual therapy is an area that I was working with in college for a while. I was involved with a ministry, Campus Crusade for Christ, and we helped people have a positive view of sexual relations within the Christian framework. So that's something I did back in college. And then when I was studying for my doctorate, I got my certification in sexual therapy. So I do help people that are struggling with sexual issues. That includes transgender. And that, of course, it includes marital issues, husband and wife having problems in their intimacy. I help them. And then also homosexuals that have problems with moral incongruence. I do not treat homosexuality. I don't believe that homosexuality is a disorder. But a lot of people that have same-sex attraction, that deal with same-sex attraction, they have an issue with moral incongruence. So when I work with gay people, we are focusing on moral incongruence. We're not focusing so much on their sexual orientation. And then also grief. I work with the terminally ill. I am a chaplain, a hospice chaplain. I work with the terminally ill and I work with their families as they are dealing with the illness and the eventual death of their loved one. So those are pretty much the areas that I focus in. I have worked with husband and wife that are not divorced and never have been divorced, but primarily when I get into family counseling, it is working with those that have been divorced. Sometimes they're remarried, they have step families, step children, the co-parenting issues, especially I work with divorced parents that are raising children with their ex-spouse. And a lot of times they need some coaching. They need to be able to set goals and achieve those goals so that their children benefit from that. And that's what I do as a chaplain, as a pastoral counselor. If you think that I could help you, if you think that you have some goals that you want to achieve, or if you're dealing with a difficult transition in life, or if you're struggling with substance abuse or alcoholism, and you think I could help, feel free to send me an email or give me a call, and we can set up an appointment when we can work together.